please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hi there, good morning and welcome. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18 as we kickstart a new week of trade. I'm Mangla Malu and with me is Anisha Jain. Morning, Anisha.
Well, morning, Manglam. Yes, a lot of cues line. President Donald Trump's first trip to the region. The yen trades near a one-week low.
Titan's second quarter beats estimates. Profit zooms 67% on robust growth in the jewelry business. Consolidated margins at multi-quarter high.
We reported it first and now it is official. Torrent Pharma to acquire Unicum Labs branded formulation business in India and Nepal for 3,600 crore rupees. Deal expected to close by the end of this year.
Infra companies in focus after NHAI cites default and terminates 20 contracts with companies like L&T, Hindustan Construction, SL Infra, MBL Infra will decide the fate of these projects on November 7th. The centre convenes an urgent meeting of all the contractors with the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways this week.
And India's first asset management company, Reliance Nippon Life, will list on the exchanges today after raising 1,542 crores in its initial public offering.
All right, first up, let's take a look at the Asian markets. They've started cautious in trade as the investors have digested some earnings reports as well as President Donald Trump's tour of the region got underway. But just take a look at the Nikkei. That one's outperforming for two particular reasons. One, we got decent macro cues coming in. The services PMI was at the 26-month high, as well as the composite PMI itself was at a 5-month high. We're getting some weakness on the yen as well. The yen is closer to that 115 per dollar mark as against Friday's close of close to 114.06. So weakness in the yen boding well for Japanese exporters. It's a near one-week low if one must. But if you take a look at the other indices out there, there is a lot of red. Take a look at the Korean markets, down almost 0.6%, led lower by marquee names like Samsung Electronics, etc. 0.3% cuts seen on the Straits as well. The Taiwanese index, though outperforming with a gain of 0.25%, but most importantly for our markets, the SGX Nifty. Remember, on Friday we closed at yet record highs, and here we have it. The SGX Nifty indicating a cut of nearly 55 points at the start. Let's see what happens as we open in trade.
Okay, sticking with news from Asia then, US President Donald Trump begins his 12-day Asian trip and his first stop is Japan. Now, Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are expected to talk about North Korea. The two leaders are also expected to discuss trade. In the coming days, Trump will also visit South Korea, China, Vietnam and the Philippines. CNBC's Akiko Fujita reports on what's on the agenda.
President Trump kicking off this Asia tour in the most friendliest of confines. We have documented that friendship between Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and President Donald Trump for quite some time. And yesterday, the Prime Minister greeting the president with a baseball cap that read, "Donald and Shinzo make alliance even greater." Of course, a nod to the president's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." The two sides did enjoy a round of golf, but today they really get down to business. The president is addressing U.S. and Japanese business leaders this morning before meeting with the Emperor and Empress. And in the afternoon, he will have a working lunch with the Prime Minister, as well as a broader round of U.S.-Japan bilateral talks there. And certainly North Korea will be top of mind there. Publicly, we have seen these two sides talk about how rock solid this relationship is. But Japanese officials really looking for some kind of clarity on what exactly the White House North Korea policy is. Now, President Trump yesterday speaking to troops, calling the U.S.-Japan alliance the cornerstone of regional security for the past 6 decades. And while he didn't mention the North Korean leader by name, he did fire this warning shot.
We will never yield, never waver, and never falter in defense of our people, our freedom, and our great American flag. No dictator, no regime, and no nation should underestimate ever American resolve.
Okay, and on Wall Street, the U.S. equities closed at record highs on Friday on back of a sharp rally in the Apple shares. Now, the Nasdaq Composite rose around 0.7% to an all-time high. Now, Apple shares rose more than 2% after the tech giant reported quarterly earnings that were way above expectations. The S&P 500 also finished at a record, climbing more than 0.25%, with the technology sector as the leading advancer. The Dow Jones notched a record close at 23,540 level. Even if you look at on the data front, the US economy added around 261,000 jobs last month versus an expected gain of 310,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate fell to 4.1%. The jobs report also showed an average hourly earnings remained flat for the month of October.
All right, let's take a look at the European markets then. Stocks closed mostly higher on Friday as investors digested corporate earnings coming in. The German DAX, that one was the outperformer with a gain of 0.3%. The automakers leading the pack out there. The French CAC rose about 0.15%, while the UK's FTSE, that one was absolutely flat at close. On the data front, the UK service sector expanded the strongest pace in 6 months in October to 55.6. That compares with 53.6 in September. Investors will be watching the EU finance ministers meet in Brussels to discuss the completion of the banking union and prepare for December's Euro summit. And sticking with the news there, we have Catalonia's ousted president who faces extradition. The sacked Catalonian leader turned himself over to authorities in Belgium on Sunday, 3 days after Spain issued an arrest warrant against him and 4 former ministers. An investigative judge will determine today whether all 5 will be extradited to Spain, where they face potential charges ranging from rebellion to even misuse of public funds.
Okay, let's shift focus now to the currency space. The dollar rose broadly on Friday after the release of US factory orders and services sector data that beat estimates, reversing an earlier slide after an underwhelming October jobs report.
From the precious metal space, gold fell to a one-week low on Friday as consensus beating US economic data pushed the dollar higher, outweighing the impact of a lackluster jobs report.
And in the world of commodities, the crude oil prices rose on Friday, nearing their highest level in more than 2 years, supported by rising global demand and physical prices and continuing expectation that OPEC and other producing countries will extend a deal to cut the output.
All right, at least 17 high-profile Saudi Arabians, including senior princes, current and former government ministers, as well as businessmen, they were arrested by security forces this weekend on orders of King Salman as part of an anti-corruption probe in the country. Billionaire Prince Al-Walid bin Talal and a director of Saudi Aramco has also been implicated in the probe. CNBC Sri Jagaraja, he reports with the details and implications.
To Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS as he is often known, cleaning house here, consolidating power by neutralising his perceived political opponents. The big question is, what happens next? Is this political shape-up going to be a smooth one? And I think, importantly, is Saudi public opinion, is the Saudi public going to be on side here? Because it's very interesting, isn't it? The way MBS has framed all of this is that no one is above the law in terms of this corruption campaign and who it ensnares, and he's going after the fat cat. So you would have thought that that ought to play well to the public, and if he does get the public on side, perhaps this political shake-up will be a smooth one. The counter-argument here is that he has arguably alienated a lot of people, a lot of princes, a lot of former cabinet ministers now, and business people, including the very charismatic and influential Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. As you know, he has a very, very high profile in the international stage and amongst investors. His Kingdom Holdings has invested in Twitter, in Citi, in 21st Century Fox. So there are international implications here. And the bottom line, as I see it, is that there are going to be some real questions asked here about the future of Saudi governments. It raises questions about political uncertainty and potentially political unrest in the kingdom, in OPEC's biggest producer, further down the line. So watch for some building of the risk premium in Saudi assets and the price of oil as well.
Okay, and in US, as many as 26 people were killed in a Texas church shooting. A gunman opened fire at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs late Sunday morning. Up to 30 people may have been injured in the incident, which comes just 1 month after the worst shooting in modern US history in Las Vegas. US President Donald Trump has tweeted that he is monitoring the situation.
All right, let's take a short break, come back and we'll focus on our own markets, all the cues, news and views you need to know for trade this morning. Stay with us.
Well, back home on the Lal Street, it was a strong day of trade on Friday, with the market ending at record high. The Nifty sitting comfortably above the 10,450 mark, and the Sensex also gained more than 100 points. But it was the PSU banks that led the market higher, with SBI being the top index gainer. But how the cues stacked up for the day today? Nigel joins us early this morning with all that you need for the trade today. Nigel, good morning. Tell us.
Well, morning Anisha, morning Mangalam. Last week was a pretty good week, as you said. Well, for the week itself, the Nifty was high with a gain of around 1%. The Nifty Bank in there, big outperformer with a gain of close to around 3%. And in Friday's trading session, well, the Nifty did well. The Nifty Bank really was the real star. That, in fact, ended with a gain of close to around 200 points or thereabouts. And from the Nifty Bank as well, the PSU index, that increased by close to around 3%, telling you that some of those PSU banking stocks had a real good day. Two reasons. One reason being PNB came out with a set of numbers. Well, the results on all parameters look very good. The slippages number was much lower. The provision coverage ratio was much lower. And in fact, Abhishek told us those numbers were good, and boy, weren't they good. So that stock really jumped up and traded. And what it did was, it gave a bit of a rub-off effect. You had the likes of SBI that was running along, Karnataka Bank, and a whole host of other banking stocks did quite well. The second piece of news came in that in fact Bharat Forge was interested in Amtech Auto Group, and in fact that was the second bit of news that really took some of those Amtech Auto Group stocks higher. But what it did was it gave some hope that there could be some of those loans that will be recovered. And that was the additional good news coming in for the PSU banking stocks as well. And that explains why, in fact, the PSU banking index, good news coming in for the PSU banking stocks as well. And that explains why, in fact, the PSU banking index was the real star in trade. Well, you're looking at the headline index and saying, well, there were big gains. But if you just take a look at the broader markets, in the last week, you had stocks that gave you returns between 20 to around 30%. So some of those broader market stocks really doing very well. At the end of the day, I was interested to know what were the institutions doing. Well, the DIIs, they took a bit of a break. They bought only around 30 crores, and the FIs, it appeared that they were big sellers. But keep in mind, there was a large trade on Bharti Airtel. And if you adjust for that large trade on Bharti Airtel, because in fact the FIs appear that they were net sellers around 9,600 crores. The deal, however, that's the deal in Bharti Airtel, was to the tune of around 10,000 crores. So adjusted for that, the FIs actually were net buyers to the tune of around 350 crores. Remember, in the previous two trading sessions, they bought more than 1,000 crores on a per-day basis. Well, we're looking at the F&O market. Mangalam will tell us later what exactly happened there. But the live indicator is the premium, or that in fact increased. They were long built up both on the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank. But if you take a look at the FIs, they were a little bit cautious in the derivatives market. They added more shorts than longs in Friday's trading session. Now, in fact, the long positions have come down to around 63% from around 70%. Remember, they're buying in the cash market, but some kind of cautiousness in the F&O market if you take a look at that. And in terms of options buying, well, they bought a lot of puts in comparison to the number of calls. They also wrote more calls than puts. So some cautiousness creeping in the FIs in terms of what they're doing in the derivatives market. Remember, we have had a good run from the middle of this year. Somewhere in June, we're up more than 1,000 points. And in the last 1 year, from those demon lows, we've gained more than 2,000 points. So, maybe in fact this morning, the SGX Nifty is suggesting a bit of a pullback. It's suggesting maybe a 50-point downtick. I think the last time I checked, 40-point downtick. Really, some kind of profit booking is par for the course. We have the highest open interest at around 10,500. So that becomes a near-term resistance on the upside. On the downside, 10,000. If you get that level, I guess a lot of money is going to come in yet again.
10,000, a few hundred points away from here. Keep an eye out on those levels, but what are the stocks you're watching out for?
Well, we're going to be looking out at that pharma deal that did take place. Remember, we told you first, Anisha and Ekta were on top of that. And that happened actually at around 5 p.m. on Friday. So Torrent Pharma has acquired the branded formulation business of India Nepal from Unichem. So both those two stocks are going to be in focus. The start of the day has to be tightened though. You know, Naveen tells us those numbers are very, very good. Bigger growth than I anticipated on the top line. Margins as well expanded. And Rakesh Jhunjhunwala very, very candid on that call. You know, some statements that he made on that call that he really likes the stock. He would like to have it for eternity, etc. So, you know, Titan could be the stock of the morning and of the day as well. Mercator, well, we have seen a bit of a run on the stock. Now they've indicated they're looking to sell one of their vessels. So watch out for that stock as well. It ended low on Friday's trade. We'll keep that stock in mind. VRL, I think they came out with the serum numbers, but what's going to dominate really is that the management has said that they're looking to do a buyback. So watch out for that stock in trade today. DLF, you know, that deal that they've been doing in terms of their rentals arms, the CCI has given the approval. So maybe a bit of a positive tick over them. But it's still result season, so a few of those results should come up for you on the screen that we're working with today. We have Pyramid Enterprises, Century Textiles. Watch out for that stock as well. It's been Mr. Tulsian's one of his big stocks, and in fact, it's given you big returns, so watch out for that one. Let's run you through a few more earnings reactions then. Godrej Agrovet, well, the numbers look more or less flattish, but good numbers. Andhra Petro, those numbers look very, very good. Sarda Energy, that's one of Mr. Tulsian's picks yet again, and that one, in fact, has done very, very well. In fact, the numbers look really good, so keep an eye out on that stock. Ceylon Exploration as well. The stock has had a big run of more than 10% in the last 10 days, if I'm not mistaken, or even more than 10%. So watch out for that stock. It looked quite good. Kytex Garments as well. The numbers look quite good, but a couple of disappointments. Shipping Corp, Manglam has been telling us about that company. Watch out for the financial performance. Didn't look very good. And Kirloskar Ferris as well. That's the other one that the numbers didn't look too good. So quite a few stocks that we're tracking early this morning.
Okay, Nigel, thank you so much for that entire list. But time now to slip into a short break. Coming up ahead, ITC lines up big investments in India. We get you an exclusive chat with ITC CEO when we return. Stay tuned.
Now, promising more measures to ease problems faced by small businesses due to GST, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said a committee of state ministers has accepted most of the suggestions made by them, and an announcement is likely in the GST Council meet this week.
जितने इश्यू सामान्य व्यापारियों ने उठाए थे, कारोबारियों की तरफ से जितने सुझाव आए थे, करीब-करीब सारे विषयों को पॉजिटिवली स्वीकार किया जा रहा है। और 9 और 10 तारीख को जीएसटी काउंसिल की मीटिंग में अगर कोई राज्य कठिनाई पैदा नहीं करेगा तो मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत के व्यापार जगत को और भारत की आर्थिक व्यवस्था को नई ताकत देने में जो भी आवश्यक सुधार होंगे वो किए जाएंगे।
On CNBC TV18, Rituparna Bhuyan caught up with Baba Kalyani, the managing director of Bharatwatch, and began by asking him as to how important are the GST-related issues raised by the small traders.
To understand GST at a macro level, when industry was looking at GST for the last 3, 4, 5 years, the general feeling was industry, economists, government, that GST will add 1 to 1.5% to our GDP. It'll reduce our costs. It'll cascade the 27 or 30 taxes into one. And it'll create a unified Indian marketplace. Okay, so I think to a large extent, all this has happened. Now, you know, in a large country like India, with such a large amount of products produced by, right from a small guy with one man in his backyard to large factories, there are multiple issues in terms of how the GST process needs to be managed. And I think that is what the government is looking at, and that's what the Prime Minister indicated, that, you know, we need 2-3 months to fine-tune the GST process to solve the problems of the small, medium industry or large industry or whoever has issues. Right. And I think they are doing that. And I think I'm very confident that at the end of the day, GST will propel this economy forward.
Right, let's move on then. ITC's CEO Sanjeev Puri, he said that the company is looking to invest 10,000 crore rupees to set up food processing facilities across the country. Added that they are working on plugging gaps in the food portfolio by making new launches. Remember, ITC has a 1 lakh crore revenue target coming in primarily from the food space, FMCG space, by 2030. So here is an excerpt of that exclusive conversation about the investments lined up by that company in that space.
We are proposing to invest about 10,000 crores in opening up food processing facilities on a pan-India basis in various locations. Most of them are underway. In fact, some of them will see commercial production this month itself. And this is after we have already done a few in the last 2 or 3 years. And ultimately, we will have a footprint of about 20 food processing facilities so that we can provide fresh stock most efficiently to the market.
The big number that you've spoken about is the 1 lakh crore rupee number by 2030. Tell us about the kind of strategy that you're going to follow to kind of achieve that number, because there's a lot you are doing both on the farm side as well as on the packaged food side.
Yes. So we are going to, on one hand, strengthen the portfolio that we have. Even within our existing categories that we have got, there are pieces which we need to strengthen, and there are pieces in which, sub-segments in which we are not operating today. So for example, right now we have a lot of focus in the health biscuit space. So that's not a segment where we were sufficiently present. So we've launched a whole range of farm-light biscuits.
I wanted to understand the kind of sentiment in the market. Over the last couple of months, we've seen destocking happening owing to the transition to GST. Demand has not been as high as it was pre-demonetization levels. When can we expect a recovery in the market?
So first of all, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that GST is a transformational reform. It is going to strengthen India's long-term story. It augurs well for the medium and long term. And a reform of this magnitude is bound to have some transitional pains. But I would say personally, I believe that the amount of pain we have faced is much less compared to what I had anticipated. I think I would say relatively it has been very smooth. And as far as consumption levels are concerned, I think we are back to the pre-demonetization levels. The trade channels have by and large recovered. I think there's a little recovery pending in the wholesale channel, but that's about all. I think overall it is largely where we were.
What about the CSD channel? That's still under pressure for a couple of companies that we've spoken to.
Well, CSD is not a big channel for us, but we are at the moment doing normal business in CSD.
Okay, on that note, let's slip into a short break. Up next, Titan will be a stock in focus today on back of good earnings and a very interesting con call. Key highlights when we return.